In the last two shows, we've been dealing with an emailer who had some criticisms about my book, Is Jesus Coming Soon?, and dealt with the fig tree illustration of Matthew chapter 24 and the use of this generation will not pass away until all these things take place. When I posted the article that I had written, the actual response that I had written to her, there's a number of people who had responded online, and I had to chide a couple of them that they don't read very carefully, but essentially repeated some of the same arguments that she had made, and which I had dealt with in my article. So again, when you're debating with somebody, and it doesn't matter who it is, make sure you understand and listen to what they are saying, so that when you respond, that you can respond intelligently, because you come across really uninformed. And this especially is true when we're dealing with non-Christians. Understand exactly what they're saying. And sometimes they don't articulate it very well. I don't think that was the case in my particular article, since I laid out, here are the passages in the book of Matthew where this generation is used. You can look those things up for yourself. One person commented that in her Bible translation, where you saw the word generation, it had a little note and said instead of this generation, it means this race. And the inference there is that refers to the Jewish race. And so it would read something like this: this race will not pass away until all these things take place. There are at least two problems with that view. The first problem is it's the wrong Greek word. The Greek word for generation is genia, and the Greek word for race is genos. And they are two distinct words. They do not mean the same. In fact, the first time that genia is used in the New Testament, is used in Matthew's Gospel in the genealogies. It talks about the number of generations from. Try to plug in the word nations there. There are 14 nations. It doesn't make any sense. Genia means generation. Genos means race. Jesus uses the word genia. He does not use the word race. This is actually a kind of an old and slippery way of getting around the obvious. You will find the use of a race in the Scofield Reference Bible. Hardly anybody makes that argument anymore. Even Tim LaHaye, Tommy Ice, and other popular dispensational writers, you will find that they do not make that argument. They say the passage should read, "The generation that sees these signs will not pass away until all these things take place." That doesn't make any sense. You have to take out the word this, add the word the, and you have to add some additional words as well. And so that's certainly not interpreting the Bible literally. And then you have a logical problem on your hands. If this race will not pass away refers to the Jewish race, and dispensationalists believe that the Jewish race continues on because they are God's set-aside people, then you have a logical problem to deal with, and because it would read this: this race will not pass away until all these things take place. This follows then that when all these things take place, this race passes away. Again, that makes no sense. When you're talking about a time period, a generation, which deals with a certain people who lives at a certain period of time, that passes away. Generation times pass away. So there's no getting around this. And don't let anybody fool you. The only way you can read Matthew chapter 24:34 is, this generation will not pass away until all these things take place. And this generation refers to the generation to whom Jesus was speaking. You have to deal with it. You can't get around it. Liberals have been trying to discount the veracity of the Bible by an appeal to that passage and say, look, Jesus said he would come back before that particular generation passed away, and he didn't, and because he didn't, therefore the Bible is not, you can't trust the Bible. And I maintain that Jesus did come back, like he said he would, in judgment against Jerusalem within that generation, and in fact he did. Jerusalem was destroyed in AD 70. Now, that judgment is not much different from the way that God promised to come in judgment under the Old Covenant. It's not much different from the threatened judgments that you will find in Revelation chapters 2 and 3. And so there's no getting around it, and in fact it really solidifies the authenticity and the veracity of the Bible. Now, the first critic who came and didn't like some of the arguments in my book, is Jesus coming soon? She goes on and she says there's a second huge problem. She says the second huge problem is that guy, meaning me, thinks the tribulation and all end-time prophecies happened in 70 A.D. I don't believe that. I believe that Matthew chapter 24 refers to events leading up to and including the destruction of Jerusalem, which took place in A.D. 70. Then she goes on, she says, guess when the book of Revelation was written by John on the island of Patmos? She has 3 question marks after it. 95 A.D. Jerusalem had already been destroyed 25 years earlier, so why would John start Revelation with the revelation of Jesus Christ, which God gave him to show his servants what must soon take place if it had already taken place? And notice what she does here. My book, Is Jesus Coming Soon?, deals with Matthew chapter 24. It really doesn't deal with the book of Revelation. But putting that aside, let's look at what her argument. She doesn't offer any substantial argument as to proof as to why she says Revelation was written AD 95. Now, I know that is a common belief. When I was in seminary, that was the belief that was put upon us, and you would get the impression from that no one believed that the book of Revelation was written prior to the destruction of Jerusalem in AD 70. And so when you do a little further study, and I gave her a source for all of this, Ken Gentry, of course, has written Before Jerusalem Fell, and also The Beast of Revelation, which deals with the dating issue of Revelation. There are countless numbers of scholars who believe that the book of Revelation was written prior to the destruction of Jerusalem in AD 70. And notice the verse that she cites here. She says, the very first verse in Revelation says, the revelation of Jesus Christ, which God gave him to show his servants what must soon take place. Well, again, I would challenge anybody to go to the New Testament. My debate with Tommy Ice, I took out the words soon, near, and shortly, and I looked up every single reference of them in the New Testament, and every time these words are used. In fact, in the 3rd verse of Revelation chapter 1, it says, for the time is near. They always mean events that are on the horizon, soon to take place. There is never any indication that when a particular event is described, it's the fulfillment of that event or the occurrence of that event is in the distant future. And so you would have to read the book of Revelation in a way that contradicts every other use of the word soon or shortly or quickly. The book of Revelation says these events are to happen soon. They're to happen quickly. Why? Because the time is near. Verse 3 says that. And if you go to the very last chapter of Revelation, chapter 22, you will see that that's exactly what it says. It says these events, after finishing the book, John is told not to seal up the prophecy. And the reason he's not to seal up the prophecy, in verse 10, and he said to me, he said to John, do not seal up the words of the prophecy of this book, for the time is near. Why say that? And then when you compare that with what Daniel was told to seal up the prophecy because the fulfillment isn't until many days, many years in the future. I believe that the book of Revelation is actually the opening up of what Daniel was told to seal up. These are the broken scrolls, the opening of those scrolls, and for events that took place in the destruction of Jerusalem in AD 70. And again, I mentioned you can find this in Ken Gentry's book, Before Jerusalem Fell, which right now is out of print, but you can probably find some online. The Beast of Revelation, which American Vision offers. And also my book, along with Frank Gummerlock, The Early Church in the End of the World, where I deal with the early church and what they believed about the premillennialism, and also have a chapter in there on the Irenaeus citation. That's really the only one they can use in support of their position. But I believe when it's read the way I interpret it, you will see that I believe Irenaeus was really referring to, not that the Revelation was written during the time of Domitian, but actually that the book of Revelation, which had been written prior to the destruction of Jerusalem in AD 70, had in fact been seen during that time, which shows that the book of Revelation was written prior to the destruction of Jerusalem, because John is told to measure the temple in Revelation chapter 11. You can't measure something that was destroyed.